Okay. Ito kasi yung sa case ng quadratic. It's not always easy to get a delta. Nakita niyo mas example natin kanina. Let me just go full screen before that. Ito yung Scratchworks natin kanina. Madali natin nakuha yung ating delta dito. Nakuha natin ay delta should be 3 epsilon because it's the linear case. In fact, it's the easiest case. But then you can actually generalize that. Nasa yung generalization ko. Wait, let me find it. This one. Okay, look at this. This is the general linear function y equal to f of x equal to mx plus b. Okay, the limit of mx plus b as x approaches a. Again, this is just the linear function. So this is a linear function defined at every x. As x approaches a will be, again, you can do this by substitution. The limit will be ma plus b. You can also trace the graph if you want. So, but then if you want to prove that really the limit of mx plus b as x approaches a is ma plus b, you have to use the epsilon delta definition. Hindi ko gagawin na yung proof para dito, but then let me tell you that for every epsilon, you just have to choose delta equal to epsilon over the absolute value of the slope of m. The slope of the line. M is the slope of the line. Look at this. For every epsilon, choose delta to be epsilon over the absolute value of the slope. And actually, yun yung ginamit natin kanina. Let me just go back sa example natin dito. Okay, in the general case, you might be asking, bakit 3 epsilon? Pero kung mapapansin ninyo, yung 3 epsilon is simply epsilon over the absolute value of the slope of the line. The slope of the line is 1/3. Tama, di ba? M equal to 1/3. So epsilon over the absolute value of m, which is 1/3, it will give you 3 epsilon. I showed you how we arrive at 3 epsilon for this specific case. And for sure, if you're going to do the Scratchworks, you can also do it for this general case. Okay? So hindi na natin siya gagawin for now. But then again, for the general case, for the linear function, for epsilon greater than 0, the choice will be delta equal to epsilon over absolute value of the slope. You have an exercise this afternoon. So regarding this one, so now you have an idea how to choose the delta for a linear function. Okay, so why did I show you that for the case of the general case? For some function, you can really come up with a general case for the choice of delta. However, it does not work that way every time. For example, yung quadratic function. This is a very simple quadratic function, a limit of x squared minus 1 as x approaches 2. Again, huwag niyo kaagad sabihin na substitute lamang yan. Okay? Avoid that. Ingat po, Ma'am Marie, nasa car po yata kayo. Ma'am Marie, accidentally po yata yung na-open kayo yung camera. Okay. So anyway, as I was saying, ito yung graph. Huwag niyo agad substitute. You first get the feel of the behavior of the function. So we want x approaches to, wait, i-full screen ko na. X approaches to, saan yun? Ito yung part na yun, di ba? X2. Minimize ko lang. Ang daming nasa window ko. My pen. Hindi lang po I'm just fixing my screen. Okay. Yan. Ito yung x approaches to. Ito yung kailangan natin as x approaches to. We want to look at the behavior of the function as x approaches to. And again, we can rely on the graph. Simply trace the graph. Yan. And then from the left. Yan. And it will approach this point. And this point corresponds to y equal to 3. That's why for this one, using the graph, okay, you can really say that the limit of the, or you can also do substitution. Okay, by substitution for 2 squared, 4 minus 1, it will give us a 3. So the limit of this is in fact 3. Okay. But again, as I mentioned, wag niyo kagad sabihin substitution. Try if you're going to teach this later on to your students, get them a feel that they are really observing behavior. Okay? Try to probably trace the graph. Ano nangyayari? Okay. Sa slide ko na naman. Sorry. Nag-jump yung slides ko. Di ko alam kung bakit. Okay. Maybe because of a lot of things that are open. Yan. Ito. 3. Okay. So now the problem is you want to prove this. At ito na yung sad. Okay, dahil kasi for the quadratic function, it's a bit complicated. You look at the preliminaries. It's basically the same as what we did a while ago. The function is defined on any interval containing 2. Let epsilon be greater than 0. The question again is what is delta? Again, these are the first 2 steps dun sa ating summary kanina. And now the third step is to get a delta. For the quadratic function, it's not that easy. I will not go over the whole details for this one. Again, the slides will be shared to you. Ito kasi yung mangyayari for the quadratic. It's quite problematic. If you substitute, parang lang tong kanina ha, absolute value of f of x minus 3, substitute x squared minus 1. If you're going to simplify that, hindi pala. Pag sinimplify nyo ito, magkikisi siyang absolute value of x squared minus 4. And we want that to be less than epsilon. And fortunately, you can factor x squared minus 4 as x minus 2. Diba? Anong tawag dyan? Difference of 2 squares lamang siya. X plus 2. Okay? Yun nangyari sa kanya. And we want this to be less than epsilon. Okay. Bakit mas komplikado yung quadratic? Walang problem yung absolute value of x minus 2. Yun na yun. Oh. However, itong absolute value of x plus 2. So for the quadratic, that's the more complicated part. Okay? Kaya mangyayari dyan, you have to bound absolute value of x plus 2. For the quadratic function, kailangan nyo magkaroon ng extra. At ito yon. The problem is how to bound absolute value of x plus 2. So ibig sabihin, you need to get absolute value of x plus 2. Okay? How do you do that? Ang gusto raw natin ay yung mga values around 2. Diba? Yan ang gusto natin. A natin ay equal sa 2. So notice ko anong ginawa kong kasunod. Pumili lang ako ng specific interval. Consider the interval 1, 3. Bakit 1, 3? 1, 3 is an interval containing 2. In fact, for interval 1, 3, okay, ito rin interval na piliin natin, interval 1, 3. 2 is precisely at the middle. Okay? Yan, interval 1, 3. In fact, for the interval 1, 3, all the values of x's there are of distance less than 1 from 2. Tama, di ba? Ito po yung open interval 1, 3. All the x's here, the distance from 2 will be less than 1. Okay? So for the quadratic function, you need to have that extra step. Okay, so that's why I'm not going to go over full details for this one because for the first time, for those of you who just, this is the first time encountering the epsilon delta definition, or probably, ngayon lang uli siya na encounter, this might be already too much. But then let me tell you, it's not always the easy case, such as yung linear function. For some function, it can get quite complicated, such as this one. Okay? So ito nga po yung ating interval 1, 3. And notice, yan. Ito yung sinasabi ko sa inyo, absolute value of x minus 2 less than 1. Okay? And from here, absolute value of x minus 2 less than 1, kailangan daw natin ng absolute value of x plus 2. And the technique here is to use this absolute value here. Kaya ito mas komplikado, you need to have a knowledge of absolute inequalities involving absolute values. Dahil kasi pag meron pong absolute value of x minus 2 less than 1, you can write that as negative 1 less than x minus 2. That is how you remove the absolute value and then less than 1. Again, this might be too much for those who just encountered the epsilon delta today, first time. Again, I'm just showing you that it's not always the easy case. And I'm showing it with you with this example. At ang kailangan daw natin, kailangan natin ng x plus 2. So to get an x plus 2, you have to add a 4. And I think alam niyo naman kung bakit tayo mag-a-add ng 4 sa bawat part ng inequality natin. So that in the middle, x minus 2 plus 4, it will give us x plus 2. Okay? And x plus 2 will be greater than 3 and then less than 5. Okay? And from there, we can get, from here, we can get that the absolute value of x plus 2 will be less than 5. Okay? So again, wag po kayong ma-overwhelm na I'm just showing you. Okay, hindi po ito, actually wala kayong gagawing quadratic mamaya sa inyong exercise. Kasi again, this might be your first time doing this, but then I'm just showing you the extent of how really the epsilon delta will work. And this is the case for the quadratic function. Okay? Yan. Actually, sa mga naka-encounter nito sa calculus ng college days nila, usually this is after one more day. Kung ba first day yung linear luma and then second day yung quadratic. But then again, this we are doing everything in a half a day for this limit. Hindi nga half a day, some hours lamang. So I hope you get the idea how really complicated the epsilon delta definition is. But then again, we don't have any other choice in terms of mathematics. Computation-wise, it's a good thing that you can compute for the limit even if you do not use the epsilon delta definition. But then again, if you're going to go to the proving part, you have to use the epsilon delta definition. Okay? But then let me just continue with this one para lang hindi tayo tapos. Nakuha natin absolute value of x plus 2 less than 5. Let me continue. Ito na siya. So yung absolute value of x minus 2 raw ay less than delta. And then ito daw, absolute value of x plus 2 ay less than 5. So that's why you're going to get this one. Okay. Ito raw ay less than delta. Ito naman daw ay less than 5. So sorry for this delta. Ang pangit yung shape niya, yung delta ko dito. Okay. And what we want is for this whole thing to be less than epsilon. Again, this is scratch work pa. And that's why it will give us that delta should be less than epsilon over 5. Yan. Okay. But then, ito na. Yung kakaiba sa problem na ito. Because of these restrictions, na-restrict natin yung mga values ng x. In fact, ito yung nagiging dalawang consideration natin. The absolute value of x minus 2 is less than delta. Absolute value of x minus 2 is less than 1. We have two considerations here. That's why it's really more complicated. But then let me just finish this. The actual final choice for delta is this one. It's the minimum of 1 and epsilon over 5. Bakit 1 and epsilon over 5? Epsilon over 5, you get it from this one. Ay, sorry, mali pala ang ginawa ko. I-clear ko muna yung mga nasa slide ko just to be consistent. Yan. Absolute value of x minus 2 times absolute value of x plus 2. Absolute value of x plus 2 is less than 5. You're going to get this. And less than epsilon, you're going to get this one. Yan. Less than epsilon over 5. But then do notice, meron tayong ginawang initial assumption here that the absolute value of x minus 2 is also less than 1. So in a sense, we considered two possible values for delta. That's why the final choice for delta is the minimum of 1 and epsilon over 5. And some of you might be asking now, iba po yung given sa solution. Alin pong iba? Sorry po, sir. May nag-message pala sa akin. Sorry. May nag-message lang sa akin, direct message. Aling iba po sa solution? Iba ba yung aking given? Anyway, sige, diretso ko lang. Okay, di ko sorry, may nag-message lang sa akin. Sorry Jessa, di ko makita kung alin yung sasabi mong nag-iba sa solution. Tama. Okay, thank you. Okay, sige. Okay, siguro kasi pwede nyo kasing baguhin. Dito kasi ang pinili ko lamang na choice ng restriction ay within one distance. Para lang I'm saying too much already. But then pwede kasing ito ang pinili ko kasi from 1 to 3, but then in fact you can consider smaller intervals here. So once again, that will show you na hindi talaga unique yung choice ng delta. Okay, but then let me just finish this. Okay, ito po yung nangyari. At ito na yung naging final choice for the delta. Okay. Again, this might be too much if this is your first time encountering this, but then I'm just showing it to you. In your exercise this afternoon, do not worry dahil kasi ang inyong magiging focus po this afternoon will just be the case of a linear function. Para lang magkaroon kayo ng feel on how the epsilon delta will work. But then let me again give you a caution that for the general case, it's not always the case. Anyway, the complete set of slides will be shared to you later. So makikita nyo naman uli ito. But let me just finish with the proof of this one. So now that we have a delta, yan. Delta will be the minimum of 1 and epsilon over 5. And do notice, naglagay ako dito dahil kasi nirestrict ko yung aking excess over this interval 1, 3. Okay? So yun yung mangyayari. And of course, it will also affect the computations part. Okay. Ito pa rin po yung kanina, once you have the delta, assume the absolute value of x minus 2 is less than delta, but then do notice there are two possible values for the delta. And for this case, you have to consider in fact both. Okay? Since absolute value of x minus 2 is less than delta, it will be less than 1 and also less than epsilon over 5. Okay? So hindi ko napapahabain yung computations natin dito, but then again, ang gusto lang natin ay i-bound yung absolute value of x minus 2 at i-bound yung absolute value of x plus 2. Yun naman yung problem natin kanina. Let me just go back. Ito po yung problem talaga natin. Malagyan ng bound yung absolute value of x minus 2 at absolute value ng x plus 2. And we were able to do that. Okay? Let me just finish. So, kaya po sa proof, ito yung mangyayari sa kanya. Yan. Yung pa rin kanina, f of x minus 3. If you simplify, x squared minus 4. If you're going to factor, x minus 2 times x plus 2. Absolute value of x minus 2 is less than epsilon over 5. absolute value of x plus 2 is less than 5, and finale, makukuha nyo pa rin yung less than epsilon. Okay? So again, for the exercise this afternoon, yung linear po ang inyong i-consider na example. Just to give you a feel kung paano nag-work yung epsilon delta. Because again, it might be too much na sa mga first time lang encounter, but then again, the idea is you just have to get used to it. Yun lang talaga po yung nagiging problem dito. That's why for you who are going probably to teach calculus later on, and then that will also involve the epsilon delta, in fact, some good exercises, nasa isa kong tapakita, na pwede nyong gawin sa class nyo, ay wag nyo na siyang ipag-solve ng delta. Kumbaga, you can probably allow your students to skip the scratch works. Let's say, yung binigay ko po sa inyong item kanina, if you want to prove that the limit of the function mx plus b as x approaches a is ma plus b, I do suggest na wag nyo silang pagawin noong scratch, nung tinatawag na preliminary analysis. Immediately give them a suggested value for the delta. Okay? Especially if this is the first one. For the quadratic, in fact, there's a general. Ito po yung general sa quadratic. The function is f of x equal to x squared. The limit of x squared as x approaches a is a squared. You look at this general case. For the general case, the choice of delta 2 should be the minimum of 1 and this value. Very similar dun sa nakuha natin kanina. Nasaan nga yun? Ito. Na yung delta ay minimum ng dalawang values. For the quadratic case, it will always be the case. Okay, because mathematically, iba kasi yung form ng continuity ng linear function. I'm saying continuity now because in a while naman tayo pupunta. Iba kasi yung kanyang, ibang-iba yung behavior ng linear sa quadratic. Because for linear, kumbaga yung slope niya ay consistent, but then for the quadratic function, to the left, nasan ba yun? To the left, sa quadratic, less yung slope dito, pero steeper siya dito sa side na ito. So magkakaiba talaga yung choice nung mas mahirap talaga yung choice ng delta. Okay? So that's why sinasabi ko kanina, if this is your first time doing this, it's best that you just do the exercise of writing the proof. Yung preliminary part, yung tinatawag na scratch work sa pinakita natin, you can probably just give what is the choice for delta, like this one. For the linear function mx plus b, if you want to show that the limit of that is ma plus b as x approaches a, immediately give the choice of delta. Okay, and then you just concentrate on writing the proof, skipping the so-called scratch works, or another term is preliminary analysis. But then that's just a suggestion. Okay. L prime. Ay, sorry, may nag-comment dito, L prime. Okay. Sige. Okay. Okay, sorry. Okay, sige. May message si Aaron. Okay, may Aaron. I'll send you a message later. Okay, sige. Oh, talaga? Binago nyo? Okay, sige. Okay, tingnan natin. Okay. So, again, that's yun lang yung mangyayari. Okay.